All right, it's July 14th. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. Yeah, all right. If you saw like the my little chicken like graphic that I put out, I think like Friday or whatever. Gonna be a fun show for me. Not for some other people, but a very fun show for me. It's been a very interesting week. When the office closed, I thought, well, this is gonna get fun for when all these attorneys want to send. I get a lot of cease and desist paperwork. Um, I think a lot of people believe that that's going to like scare, and it probably works with a lot of folks. It scares people into, oh, I'm not going to talk, or oh, I'm going to take that video down. Yeah. Or I see them as like invitations to play. But anyway, when I moved out of the office, I thought, I wonder how they're going to find me, right? Like, didn't take them long. Should have remembered that all the attorneys in Little Rock know where I live. Had that first experience of knocking on the door and somebody handing you an envelope and you going, yeah, throw it away. Made me think about talking about some more post-repair inspections. So I think I'm going to do that today. And I'm going to talk about some more State Farm stuff. Although I will say this, State Farm's never the insurer that sends me paperwork at all. They realized after years of me working there, it's really a lost cause and I have no hope. So they will just let that ship burn. I think everybody eventually thinks this is going to burn out. We're on year 18 of Collision Hub. I don't see us burning out at all. And then I got to get to the airport and get my butt in Texas. I know it's only 4 hours. I should probably drive, but I've decided to fly. Going to spend some time with some friends whose companies are headquartered in the DFW market. We'll just say that. And I really do like every time I get to go over there. So very, very exciting times to go hang out with those folks. But let's get to what you came for, because it wasn't just to hear me ramble. What are we going to talk about this week on Coffee Talk? Well, it's a pretty short list. We're going to talk about part selection, whether that's aftermarket or used, and just some of the craziness that's out there. And I just don't think insurance adjusters are trained anymore to know origin, and they just sort of blindly trust. And so something popped up in one of the Facebook groups that wildly entertained me. So I'm going to share it with you guys in the massives. We're going to talk about more on State Farm seatbelt inspections position after, we talked about the CARSTAR email last week. More shops have been getting this week emails from their area directors instructing them on what they believe they should be doing with not only just probably in the DRP environment, but you're going to start seeing this. We asked a lot of shops to write back to try to just get some more details, see if we could put some more bookends around this, and we're going to talk about what came out of that. We're going to talk about a progressive adjuster that tries to get cute and it backfires. I used to tell my adjusters, don't think that. That's probably one of the worst things you could do is think. You'll get me in more trouble and the lawsuit will get more expensive. But this is an adjuster that I'm going to say probably wasn't an original idea. Somebody else had probably done it. It's one of those things where somebody in the claims office says something, you think it's successful because either the customer goes away or the body shop goes away, and it works until it doesn't work. It reminds me of that movie, Anchorman. 60% of the time, it works 100% of the time. And so it's nothing new in claims, but it entertained me greatly. So of course I'm going to share it. We're going to talk about CARSTAR and some DRP repairs. I will continue to preach and scream from the arches. You cannot do a proper repair and be a DRP shop, which means I don't know how you could be an OE would allow a DRP to be on their OE certification program. But we'll just share more of what every day at Collision Hub looks like. So you guys, this isn't like once in a blue moon or once every 6 months. Every week we get 2, 3, 4 post-repair inspections that are honestly not even as bad as, that are worse than this one. So this one wasn't like the worst we've seen in the last week, but it sort of entertained me. We're going to talk about Kentucky total loss regulation, an update bill, and an emergency hearing that's coming like in August for them, and then some fun coverage for a lawsuit that's out there. It's BMW. I believe that lawsuit started in 2007, and it had some resolution over the last couple of weeks. And it's got some applications to Bodyshop. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and see some insights, maybe some questions and things that as a shop owner you should be asking yourself around coverage and things. All right, let's just kick it off. Quality parts. Like, do you know where the parts are coming from? Do you even try? If you're an insurance adjuster that you're writing estimates and you're sourcing parts and trying to tell a consumer that we believe this part is compensatable for your loss. In other words, when you're an adjuster and you put that crap on your estimate, what you are saying is, we believe that this is what you are fairly owed for your claim. So I used to look at my adjusters and go, do you think that's fair? And they would look back and go, no. I'm like, right, yeah. If it's not fair compensation for the loss, then we don't use it. Body shops, if it's not a good part and it's possibly going to cause the customer to, I don't know, maybe die, maybe you shouldn't use it either. But this was a great great post where you had an estimator at a body shop who was working on a front end damaged vehicle, and the estimator had sourced a recycled impact front bumper sensors on this vehicle. And then, you click through and go, well, what's the donor car look like? And this. So if I'm replacing the sensors, let's say it's General Motors, and General Motors says, if the impact is in the area of the sensor, like the sensor doesn't have to be damaged, but if the impact's in the area of the sensors, you must replace them. So would it make sense to use parts off a car that had front end damage? Like, let's just marinate on that one. But if there's no standard with the part supplier, so in this case, LKQ, you can kind of see their name was creeping out there a little bit. I'll put that back up for everybody's viewing pleasure. But if there's no standard to what can get listed as an available part, like for instance, I would have assumed, because I don't believe LKQ is without any sort of like policing ethics. I mean, they probably don't want to get sued either. I would have assumed there was probably some sort of internal guideline that would have not allowed those parts from a vehicle like this to have even been listed as available. It would be almost like when this car came in and you're triaging it for for LKQ. Hey, these are the parts we don't even need to bother taking off the car because we can't use them. All right, you've got bag deployment in this car. You've got all kinds of things. But I guess from the harvester's mindset, so the people that work for the recycled car companies, people that are harvesting these parts, they're probably just looking at them and going, oh, if it's not damaged, then we can tag it and sell it or whatever. I at least am I'm appreciative that there's software, there's things that like a good dedicated estimator can make a few more clicks and go, no, I'm not using this part. Are you crazy? Look at this car. And you can show the consumer that car. And I'm grateful that typically, even if you don't have a supplier that does this, you can at least Google the VIN. So a lot of times we'll get a VIN off of what is considered the donor car. We'll Google it and pull it up and look at it and go, oh my God, like for a full frame, like it's a total fire or whatever. Like, no, we're not putting that car, we're not using that part. It's been exposed to too much heat or whatever. So adjusters, just because it pops up in your part availability list apparently doesn't mean that, one, it's even available. We've looked at that before on the show where it shows parts that aren't even in existence. Two, it might not even be a real part supplier. So we've already showed that on the show a couple of times where you like enter the address and it's an empty field somewhere in Iowa. So this isn't even a real business. Or three, the donor car is of such poor quality and has incurred so much damage itself that the parts off of it would be just about as good as the parts you're taking off of the original damaged vehicle. So when you're thinking about used parts specifically, like at least aftermarket parts, they're probably not the same crash worthiness, they're not the same material, they're not the same integrity or whatever, but they're not damaged. But when it comes to the recycled parts, make use of all the different features, I guess, that the software has for you when you're estimating, and do your diligence to see whether these parts should even be considered to be put on the vehicle, and have those real world conversations with the adjusters and go, look, I know you're showing it on your parts list. I get that it's there. but this is what the car looks like. And would you want parts off of this car? And is that what is fairly owed to the consumer as compensation for their loss? Like, we're not even arguing maybe, well, we'd love new parts, but I'm not even trying to argue a new part. I'm just basically saying that's not a good core. That's not a good donor vehicle. Like, we don't want to use that. Let's not use that. So make sure you're using your all the features that your software has available, or you're Googling VIN numbers, or you're making and checking on this. I appreciated this particular estimator's post and how ironic they thought it was, and sharing that. And so I think more people would learn from that. Let's talk about State Farm. So last week we shared an email, sort of a directive from CARSTAR to their shops about how they're supposed to be behaving on the State Farm program at State Farm's direction. And that seatbelt inspections are now included. It went around several different email, or I don't want to say emails, but communications after that came out directly from State Farm to individual shops across the country that were pretty much saying the same thing. It's now State Farm's position that and it went back and forth, and everybody worded it differently. That's the thing I used to hate from the corporate world, from corporate communications aspect, is that we had a message to communicate. And then by the time it went through 27 different field, level managers and trickled down, the message was, it was kind of like that gossip game you used to play as a kid where you'd whisper and something would go around the circle. I would have loved to have seen basically a copy paste. That would make me feel much better if corporate would have said, this is what you tell your shops. That's all you tell your shops. So there was many different interpretations as shops all over the country started sending those to me last week, and I'm looking at them. Several shops were smart enough to ask back questions and go, okay, but what does that mean? And so here's what we sort of come down to. It sounds like State Farm believes what has been taught in the estimating classes, even from a corporate level. So what was taught by State Farm's property claims trainers, PCTs, and estimating people from corporate on what was a good estimating process. The basics of seatbelt inspection, we taught that. That wasn't anything like, this isn't anything new. This isn't like the last 2 or 3 months or the last couple of years. If I go back to the 90s, we were teaching estimators within the company, so staff appraisers for the insurance industry, we were teaching them how to do basic seatbelt checks, how to pull it all the way out, how to look at the webbing for distortion or whatever, how to do a thump test, how to do a buckle function test. Those were just basics. And I can somewhat agree that they're part of the estimator's duty. It's not necessarily included. I mean, everything I do has to be compensatable. However, I'm doing that, whether I'm adding an estimate fee or whatever. I can't imagine doing everything for free. But then if you're on a DRP, you're doing almost everything for free. But there are some just basics of inspections that you should have been doing for the last, I don't know, 100 years we've had seatbelts. This isn't new, and we didn't have to put these seatbelt inspection processes in the repair procedures. The reason they're sort of there in the way they are now is because the seatbelts are so much more advanced than they were when we were teaching this at the corporate level. So it really feels to me like the basics of auto estimating school. So for the last 30 years, that seems to be what they think is included as part of the estimator's job duty. So webbing checks, that's pulling it all the way out, making sure it rolls back up unimpeded, checking the webbing for any rips, tears, distortions. That webbing is designed to stretch. It's not designed to stay. If it was rigid, it'd probably cut us in half. I have seen some really nasty and gnarly seatbelt injuries and photos of that in my career handling bodily injuries. The thump test is where you pull it out sort of rapidly, kind of get a little bit of a handful of material, and then you're going to want to pull it forward. You want to feel it lock up. If it doesn't lock up, or it locks up differently from the right to the left or from the front to the back or whatever, you may have some problems. It's not necessarily, oh my God, I couldn't get the thump test to work, there's a problem. It's just an indicator that more research or more inspection is needed. And then buckle function is, can you buckle it in and unbuckle it and buckle it in and unbuckle it without any catching, locking, any of those things. I taught estimators to do that for the last 30 years. This video that, I went back and said, okay, based on the feedback I'd gotten from various State Farm replies across the country, anything sort of outside of the normal easy function, things we used to teach estimators to do, if it's outside of that realm, like let's say it's the Ford test where you got to get all the seat belts activated or occupied, you get it to 13.5 miles per hour and you hit the brakes. Okay, that wouldn't be something the estimator would do, right? But if it's in the normal checks, so this webbing check, thump test, and buckle functionality test, those seem relatively easy to train. Obviously, I could train a kid that was just fresh out of college with a basket weaving degree to become an estimator in a way. So your estimators at your shop are probably competent enough in completing that. But if it's anything outside of this list, then it sounds like that's probably going to need another charge. They didn't want to come out and say it in the email, so I think it's going to be one of those case-by-case bases, but you just need to be prepared to explain why what you're doing is different, above the norm, not basic, and then what that charge represents for that. Now, if you've never had estimating basic training on seatbelt inspections and functionality, we have this video. It's 11 years old. Larry and I look wonderful in this video because we look so young, right? No gray hair. It's amazing. But you can go watch this video on YouTube. It's a freebie, and it's just inspecting and estimating seatbelts. We also throw in some car seat inspections for there as well. We're not a big fan of, if you're going to inspect a car seat and then say that it's still good to use, you should get a lot of formal training for that because there may be some liability there. But there's some basic inspections of seat belts. You can also become like a certified car seat like installer or whatever, and you usually do those through hospitals, state police, et cetera, in your town. You can look into those. But if you want to know more about this position on including, and then how to separate when you're reading procedures, what could be contrived or construed as included, and then what you would want to add extra for. Watch this video first, and then as you're reading the OE procedures, just ask yourself, does it meet those basic requirements, or does this require above and beyond knowledge? Does it require a scan tool? Yep, probably not this. Does it require disassembly and physical inspection of squibs? Yep, probably not this. Is there active, or I guess I would consider dynamic testing involved? Yep, probably not this. So things to keep in mind when you're looking at State Farm. And then we all know that once an insurer, not necessarily just a State Farm, but once an insurer does something that generally catches on, it's the yeah, us too. We're going to do that too. Mentality starts to take a hold, and those things will come in. All right, let's talk about the adjuster fail. This one made me giggle greatly when this one was sent to me by one of our shops. So I thought I would pass it on. Look, I've spent a lot of time telling my adjusters over my career, don't get cute. And I say the same thing to shops. If you think you're being sarcastic, if you think you're being cute, if you think you've got some aha moment analogy or whatever, back off of that until, I mean, you can run it by somebody and we can let you know whether we think you're right or not. But I have seen more times in my career, somebody gets to feeling cute, gets to feeling really smart, thinks that they've got some aha, I'm going to catch you and get you kind of moment. And it never goes really well. Well, in this one, obviously the shop had written for repairs and inspections required after a collision, and the adjuster didn't want to pay them. And there's this moment of negotiation. And so the progressive adjuster asked the shop, can you show me where, I'm sorry, and it looks like I've got a typo here. So for those of you looking online, I've wrote the story wrong. But basically, it was the adjuster. Can you show me where the OE defines minor collision in the procedures? And then the shop's response is, well, there's not a definition section in the OE. This isn't like an insurance policy where we start with the definitions. There's not really per se a definition section for this OE. But we can go look it up in the dictionary together if you would like to, and we'll just see kind of what the dictionary defines as a minor collision. So this progressive adjuster goes, well, I got you. There's no definition, and because there's no definition, then it's subject to interpretation and blah, blah, blah. So their response was, without the OE defining a collision, we do not think this qualifies for post-collision inspections. And so the shop, thankfully, I'm super proud because they've taken the negotiation training, they're listening, they're learning. Like I said, we really want to listen. A lot of times you can't get so caught up in trying to defend your position that you miss an opportunity when the adversary gives you a completely different door or window in which you can drive the damn truck through. So the shop went, okay, well, then why do you have this listed as a collision claim on the estimate? Kind of a question mark. And then, well, you must also feel that this vehicle was involved in a collision. And then, do you have various levels within your policy of definitions for collision? So, did you define what you think various collisions are or whatever? And of course, the progressive adjuster was like silent. And then their response is, well, we're going to allow this as a one-time concession. I love one-time concessions. You can one-time concession me every day. You can have a line at the bottom of every estimate that says one line concession, $4,374. I don't need an insurer to estimate a vehicle exactly like my lines are written. I just need the money, right? However you want to give me the money is fine with me. But this was a reminder of, too often, I'll get called in or I'll get an email when you're 30 days into this negotiation and now like the shit has hit the fan and you feel like it's over. And I get this exchange of emails, and there's always this one moment in there where we're either way too aggressive in the beginning with what we feel is a superior position, or in that superior position can be knowledge of the repair process, or it can be like we believe we're the protectors of safety, like whatever that superior mountain is that we want to plant our flag on. And then there's this ping pong match of going back and forth at each other that really served no purpose. Like we weren't really trying to negotiate anything. We were just trying to prove we were right. And then we thought if we could prove we were right, then they'd have to agree with us, and then therefore we'd get our money. There are so many mistakes that can be made in that process. And one of them can be trying to be a little too cute, right? Like you think you're going to find this one little word or this one little thing, and it can come back and sort of bite you. So, this one worked out well. The shop thought it through. They didn't overreact. They didn't panic. They just sort of went to a questioning technique like, well, why do you have it listed as collision? And then why do you, what do you define the different variances or whatever? And that was great work. So staying level-headed, staying like true to the process of what a good negotiation is, which is the questioning technique, always works better than just about anything when it comes to dealing with an adjuster. But a reminder for shops, don't do this. Like, don't think you know more than the other party. Don't think that it's going to allow you to be sarcastic or do some things. It'll come back and it'll bite you when you, I don't want to say when you least expect it, but it'll bite you when you can least afford it. It basically is the other thing. At the end of the day, it's the customer that loses. All right, let's talk about post-repair inspection. I have made this comment over and over around the industry in the last like several years. And I want to keep coming back to the fact that our collision industry conference, the greatest collection of sport coats ever held every year under one roof, 4 times a year, tried to have a committee that addressed like post-repair inspections and things that were being seen. It was so bad, the committee was shut down. In other words, enough people in the room at this CIC meeting, or they like to call them the stakeholders. I like to call them the bill payers, however you want to refer to that. But the stakeholders, which was the insurers, and then the people that really want to make sure insurers are happy, like paint companies and other people in the room, estimating companies, got super nervous that CIC was talking about post-repair inspections and shut that whole committee down. So folks, when I tell you collision repair is the worst I've ever seen it I don't have a long history. I mean, I guess I was born into this. So I got 50 plus years of being in the collision repair business. I've never seen it as bad as it is now. And I worked for an insurance company. My job was to re-inspect shops all over the country, and my job was to inspect the shops that were supposedly the problem shops. So I was in and out of crap every week and every day for the 20 something years I was in that side of the business. But today when I go look at cars, it is mind-boggling how bad it is, and twofold. It blows my mind how bad the repairs are, but I think what blows my mind even more is how the people doing it don't even know it's bad and they defend this crap. So there's one thing you get a bad repair. So let's say I'm a shop owner and I get a bad repair and I didn't know. Like, I have morals and I have integrity and I have ethics and I have all the things I'm supposed to have. And then someone brings me a car that I've repaired and I go, man, I can't believe one of my people did that. And you feel personally responsible. But now I go back and the shop owner's like, I don't know what's wrong with this. I don't know why you're upset with this. I don't know why you're trying to ruin our business, or the other crap I hear these people saying lately to justify the shit that is coming out of shops. Now, it's not coming out of these backwoods shops. That's what I want to keep telling people over and over. I'm not re-inspecting the independent collision owner that saves deductibles. I don't have time for that. I mean, like, there's people out there that can go do those post repairs, but myself and Larry and Mark Olson, we don't have time for that. We're only doing the very high end, upper class DRPs and OE certified locations. Those are the ones we want. I ain't got time to mess with the other stuff. Does that exist? Absolutely. Are those repairs horrible? Absolutely. I'm more upset when I get a repair like that out of these guys because the customer didn't expect it. Now, if you go to a body shop and you want to save your deductible, you want some money back or whatever, you should expect what you got as a consumer. Like, you wanted to circumvent the system, you wanted to line your pockets a little bit, and this is what you got for it. When customers choose OE certified and DRP, they're not expecting to get a bad repair. In fact, they've been told something quite the opposite by everybody that's involved. So I hold DRP shops to a greater, higher standard than everybody else. So when they tell me, Chris, you need to leave DRP alone, you're just picking on them, there are worse shops in town. Yeah, there are. But the consumer doesn't blindly trust those shops. The consumer will blindly trust a DRP or an OE certified because somebody else that knew more or knew better was supposed to be watching these people. Like, who watches the watchman? You'll hear me say, we say that over and over. But as a consumer, there's a default trust that you believe that the shop should be at a higher level because there's somebody that knows what you don't know as a consumer that chose these shops and picked them for a reason. So I shouldn't have to worry about them or inspect them or triple check them or do as much as I would to the average. So let's get into this repair. This is not the first one coming out of that. So that's the other thing. I typically don't get involved in the one and done kind of thing. I'm usually stepping in when it's the second, third, fourth car coming out of the same shop, same market, etc. When an insurer is particularly being abusive, pulling cars, trying to shut a shop down and send them into their DRP network, then we got to go in and we got to rip your DRP network apart. Like, we've got to show that it's almost negligent for you to refer customers to your DRP shop. So this was how the vehicle presented. So you can see some Mazda had a front end impact, pretty significant front end impact from the pre-repair photos that were available on this car. Should have been a total. By no means do I believe this vehicle should have been repaired, but we act like a total loss is a death in the damn family these days, because if we total a car, how are our technicians going to feed their families? I would much rather a technician have to go find employment in another career field outside of the collision repair industry than to have a consumer, I don't know, in a wheelchair. So no, I don't feel sad or I don't feel responsible or bad about cars totaling and technicians losing salary. Like, that is the dumbest thing. Typically, one of the first things a body shop owner tries to tell me in their defense for why they've done one of these repairs is, well, it was a slow month, and yeah, you're right, it probably should have totaled, but we needed some repairables to keep our staff or whatever. I do feel terrible when people lose jobs. I do. And in these last couple of months, lots of companies are doing layoffs, and lots of people that I know personally and respect have lost their jobs. But at the end of the day, I am much more I would much more advocate for a career shift than for consumer endangerment. Like, nobody gets to make a living while endangering the consumer. So those of you right away can already see we got a problem, right? This off the bat. Whoever was putting this car back together should have known there was a problem. Whoever QC'd it before delivery, because there's a damn QC form, should have known there was a problem. Visually, all the indicators are there to say that this vehicle still has some crushing structural issues. If we look at these gaps and the way they are lined up, they match the impact. So that's another thing I always say about, I think a lot of times blueprinting has caused estimators to miss indicators and caused technicians to miss them as well. Although this one's not the excuse, and we're going to find out later why. But a lot of times we have people just get it in, tear it down, and I'll come out and look at it. So our estimators become order taker, and an order taker mentality. They come out and just check list of parts that are damaged. They double click, add a few little non-included here and there's, and they think they've written an estimate, but they don't look at the impact. And so sometimes impact positioning or forces, the way the forces travel through the vehicle, et cetera, are missed. The BMW is a great example of that when we do that one in training classes of all of the indicators are there to know why this vehicle should have had a pre-measurement done. But now that we're looking at this vehicle put back together, what you see in gaps, the downward and the sway, the way it's there is exactly the same damage that was evident in the pre-teardown photos. So I'm not going to give an excuse on this one because you're going to see later why. But had this vehicle not had what the photo I'm going to show you had, the pre-teardown was all we needed to know why this vehicle needed to get over to the rack, and it needed to be pre-measured. You can do a pre-measure program in a lot of different ways, right? We have one of the things I'm most excited with right now is Sillette's web tool program. I think it's $60 a month. You get access to all of the CAD data, that's the zero measurements. A lot of other measuring systems from, structural companies start with, they went and measured cars off the street after they'd been delivered, but Silette starts with zero data, which is what I love. And they have a program for tram gauges now. So I get it, having a $40,000 measuring system in your shop, it's hard to share it with blueprinting, triage, pre-measuring, and then have it over in a structural bay department. Most people don't want to take the time and energy. When I visit shops, they typically tell me there's only one guy in the damn shop that knows how to use the measurement software anyway, and that's the guy. Well, he sets them all up, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you have $100,000 basically invested in measuring equipment? Because all these shops I go to typically all have car liner, and they've all spent a lot of money on their car liner, Evo 1.2, whatever it's taken for them to get on the list. But then I got one guy that knows how to use it. Oh, and then when I go pull up the software, it's not been updated for about a year and a half. But I get that that's a problem. So being able to do tram gauge quick measurements and triage, all I'm asking for is to go, do I have a problem? Yes or no. And then once those quick measurements go, yeah, you got a problem. Now I know it's got to go get a real good detailed setup and measure so that we can really accurately identify what's wrong with this vehicle. We just get so caught up in the processing. And that I mean processing and whipping that vehicle through the shop as fast as possible. People don't want to do anything that'll stall it out. They're trying to make a check. They're trying to hit a cycle time report for some damn insurance company, which in this case was a problem. This vehicle definitely had all the structural damage indicators in the pre-teardown photos. There was no reason this thing shouldn't have been on a system. As we look through the repairs on this car, you are going to see that there were some extremely evident. In other words, this was not a mistake. This is not something where the technician missed, forgot, had a bad week, whatever. There was a lot of work done to make this car deliver but not fix it properly or correctly. In other words, we went out of our way and did a lot of crap to a car to try to make it work when we could have just fixed it right. But of course, fixing it right would have totaled it. And somebody needed to make a check because they had a family to feed. Like, I just want to make sure we drive that home. The excuse I get is, I've got a family to feed. Does that make any sense to anybody at all? Does that comment even like come through? Does it anger you like it angers me when I hear a shop owner or a technician say, I've got a family to feed? Like, we're supposed to think that these repairs are okay. You're supposed to get a pass. We're supposed to feel sorry for you because you have a family to feed. So you can tell this tech worked really hard hammering on that apron, hammering out those basically the little support brackets to keep that fender held up. We like to call them pedestrian brackets a lot of times. But we hammered the crap out of that apron. We hammered the crap out of that fender. And we did a lot of stuff to, like, not replace parts and try to make things fit. It gets worse when you start to look at, as we went to put this front end together and not a damn thing was fitting, which, by the way, there's a ton of Kappa shit on here. So the tech probably told themselves that, well, nothing's fitting because it's aftermarket. Yeah. Car's fine. Nothing's fitting because it's just these aftermarket parts, although that becomes a lie later too that we're going to show in the next round of photos. But you can tell where the technician starts to slot parts. Now, for those of you that have worked as a technician and you've slotted a part, it's not necessarily easy. There's a lot of labor into slotting a part. Like, I got to take it off. I got to take it over a part stand. I got to do some cutting. Maybe, I used to keep a Dremel tool in my toolbox. Everybody did. But there was a lot of work to make these parts fit. And you can't tell me that this happens in a shop and no one's aware. Like, in a shop, I can tell you what the guy next to me had for lunch. Like, body shops are like, they're worse than high school, right? For drama and gossip and everything that's going on in them. And we know everything about everybody's business and what's going on. Then suddenly you have a bad repair and everyone's like, I don't know. I didn't see anything. I didn't know. Shop's got a manager. It's got a shop foreman. It's got a parts manager. It's got 3 estimators, and nobody saw anything wrong or going on with this car while it was being repaired. I'm calling shit on that one. Everybody knew, but everybody's goal was to repair the car, not get it declared a total by the customer, deliver it, get paid, and then hope to God you never see this customer again, because we got to make a living. Let's not worry about whether this customer lives in the next estimate or the next accident. That's not our problem, right? We just got to make a paycheck come Friday. Slotting parts is a commitment. Like, you went out of your way. You were well aware that there was an issue because you were slotting parts to make them fit. All right. When we get into teardown, so now we're going to take this magical mess pile of crap apart and take a look at it. As they start to tear it down, you can see how hard that impact was the first time. There should have been more parts replaced on this vehicle, but of course, if we'd have done that, the vehicle would have totaled like it should have, like the original photos from the data loss said, hey, I call them a 300-footer, right from my window outside the parking lot. I can go, yeah, that's an obvious total loss. Should have been a goner. No way, no how, no one should have tried to fix this car, but hey, we got a family to feed, so let's just keep remembering that. Should have, yep, parts should have been replaced. Here's where it gets really bad, right? Make sure I get all this up for you guys to take a look at. Sorry, here. I'm going to get the picture up for you. So if you are listening on like a Spotify or the Apple podcast version or whatever, make sure you go find the video version of this on YouTube. Or I think it's on a couple other places, so that you can see these pictures and play along. We definitely know right now more should have been done. I'm not even sure what the tape was for. Like, we're going to debate over that a couple times. But now's where I sort of lose it, right? Like, oh, how did I leave this picture out? Oh, Jess, see, this is the thing, bad part about live. Okay. I'm going to put this picture up on the website, or on the Facebook page so you can see it. All right, that left crush cap. So you can see the top of it. If we go over the left crush cap, you can see where it's dented in. Like, you can see where it's sucked in. Right over that top where you see the 4 bolts for that crush cap. So from the bumper rebar, the crush cap, and then into the unibody right there. You can see that crush cap has collapsed top and bottom. It is very, very evident. Like, Ray Charles could have told you that this thing needed at least that left section. So we needed the rebar, we needed that left section. We needed to have measured everything back so that we could see how far it went. There is no way, unless Ray Charles is actually a technician at this body shop, there is no way that car was taken apart, disassembled in a blueprinting process, and that was not seen. That was intentionally ignored to save the car. Like, you can tell me all day long what you think, oh, this and that. No way that wasn't seen. We could see it from the door of the shop in the stall. And then it made sense with what all the gapping issues were, right? So we're over and we're down. So that it's going to tell me why I had all those gap issues on that right front corner of that car before we even, like, as soon as that car pulled in, the customer says they need a post-repair inspection. We're like, I don't have to tear it down to tell you what's wrong with that one, right? We didn't measure the thing we just took a few parts off, and there it is glaringly at us. That part needed to replace. several parts within the front end needed to replace, and then we needed a complete measurement to go from where that cap bolts in backwards so that we would know, okay, well, where else did the force go? This car took a hell of a lick to the front end, and so where all did that force travel to? Clearly, we had some issues on that upper rail because we hammered the crap out of it and then just left all that raw. We didn't even try to paint it and clean it up. But we put this back together and gave it back to a customer. This is a CARSTAR location that is on just about every insurer's DRP list. They would have been one of the ones getting that email from last week saying, hey, as the single point of contact for State Farm, this is what we expect you to do. And it's not like the first time a post-repair inspection has shown a problem. If I find one and you as an owner go, oh my God, we have a problem, I'm going to let go of that tech, I'm going to go do some training, we're going to come up with a new QC process, we're going to prevent this. But no. And then the insurers continue to allow, when the insurers are made aware, so they get a little email that says, hey, this DRP claim, we got a warranty problem and we got a workmanship problem and we have a fraud problem, we do have some other things. They continue to allow the shop to be on the program. There's no consequences. If there's no consequences, why would a shop ever want to change their way, right? Just keep doling up the money until something, at least we caught this one without another accident. So we didn't have a John Eagle, a Sheba Shan situation, right? This is just like you need to buy the car. But why keep trying to do better or doing better? And in fact, I'm gonna yell at, this is what happens when I do a live show, because I can just, kind of like deviate. I want, instead of putting it in the comments, I really do want everybody to try to, see that. So you can see how bad, because everybody's like, well, Kristen, I think I see what you're trying to show me, but I can't. So I'm gonna keep looking for that. Okay. While I look for that, let's talk about what's going on in Kentucky for total losses. Kentucky has had a ruling about, let's see, how you come up with a total loss evaluation, like what the paperwork is for that. Oh, there it is. See, if you wait long enough, you can get what you can see what you want to see. Okay. I'm going to show this picture. Okay. That's the cap. So, we were looking down across the top of that, and you could see that top indentation where the thing sort of like, as it starts to crush and those crush zones fold up on each other and it looks like an accordion, like we're, the dancing monkey, so to speak. That's the top and the bottom of that. No way they didn't see that. You cannot tell me that, oh, we missed it. Bullshit. You did not miss that. You were well aware that that was there. You just didn't want to tow the car. Somebody wanted to make a check that month. Now, the shop's going to tell me that, well, that we didn't know. That must have been just the tech's decision. Techs shouldn't be empowered to make those decisions, right? Like, if I can hear it, the tech in the back going, man, I'm not turning a supplement on this because they'll total it and I'll lose all the money and I need to check this week. Things have been slow. Hadn't been a lot of cars. I haven't been making money, which is why flat rate and commission doesn't work. But yeah, no, you don't get to use that excuse for me. Okay. All right, let's go back to total losses in Kentucky. Okay. Kentucky's had this thing for a while about, like, there was a couple of sources and you could use Kelley Blue Book or you could use NADA guides. And then there was some confusion around when JD Power bought NADA. And so there's they're going to update this regulation to be more clear, basically just to say it's going to be JD Power and it's going to be Kelley Blue Book are the nationally accepted. It doesn't rule out the use of something else. So that I think that's that ambiguity. The insurers go, well, yeah, cool, but it doesn't mean we can't do the CCC evaluations. There's a hearing and we'll see where that comes up. But it's interesting to me that there's still a lot more work being done around sort of putting some bookends as we've had all of these lawsuits around CCC's evaluations. Recently, there was a progressive lawsuit out in Pennsylvania, and it had been certified a class for the last several years over how Progressive was settling total losses. Last week, that was kicked out, and it's no longer a class. So the court sided with Progressive, and that case, which was, I think, originally filed in Pennsylvania, is no longer a class action. So there's a lot going on around total loss and total loss evaluations. There's a lot of people looking for an alternative to CCC, and there's a lot of other parties and things coming to the table, which will be interesting to see. But we're going to keep an eye going on in Kentucky. I think what the hearing and what some people are asking is the insurers are asking that the CCC report or be also considered one of the availables. There's a hearing. I'm not going to go to Kentucky to hear the hearing because, yeah, no. But we'll keep our eye on it. All right, let's talk about this case. So this case, basically, BMW versus Complete Recon, and then it ended up being Colony, which was the insurance company for this Recon company. All right, at the facility over in South Carolina, you can there's a test track and there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of like, I guess, like the Porsche experience in Atlanta, where you can pick cars and put them on the track and do a lot of things. Well, this Recon company was contracted by BMW to detail all those cars. So I guess at the end of the day, after you've had all these people driving them, these people would come and wash and detail all those cars so they're ready for the next day. And they left the windows open, and a big rainstorm comes through. Those cars are flooded with water from the rain, and then BMW estimates the damages to them from the rainstorm are like $600,000. I want to say there was like 10 cars. It wasn't, and I'm thinking, So they're worried about what Bodyshop's right, but not worried about what they write on their own from water damage. Okay, cool, good to know. Anyway, what made this one interesting to me, and the reason why I wanted to talk about it, is that BMW had got themselves listed as an additional insured on the certificate of insurance, particularly as an additional insured under the liability coverage. I went through this a couple of years ago. A friend of mine owned the marina in which I had both of my boats at the time parked, and their insurance agent had told them to become named insured on everyone's policy. So I get this letter from the marina that says, you need to add us as a named insured, and I called my friend and went, no, you don't want to do that, because you can't be liable to yourself. So you don't want to be a named insured on the policy. And she was like, no, that's what my agent told me to do. Please not do that. And I'm not doing that, because if you're a named insured and we can't be liable to ourselves, and then I run over your boat because I'm drinking on the lake, or my kid runs the jet ski into the dock or whatever, and then I don't want them to say, we can't be liable to yourself, and they were named insured on the coverage, but I would like my insurance policy to pay if I hit the marina, which at the time we had a lot of people running into the docks, and it was causing a lot of damage, and that stuff's not cheap to fix. So, but anyway, the court sided with Colony Insurance on this one, which basically said they don't have any right to the policy and some other things. And Colony is one, although this, I think this case started in 2007 or 2008. The first the first ruling was 2012, and now here we are, 2025. So these court cases take forever. All right, why are we talking about it? For you shops, I just want you to think about anybody that you have do work for you. So just like BMW was having this detail company detail cars, some of you actually do outsource to detail companies, a glass company, an ADAS company, all of these things. We want to know that those people have insurance, and they have good and enough insurance for what they're doing or what our possible exposures are, particularly when it comes to liability around ADAS. So a certificate of insurance is always something good to say, I just want to prove you got a policy and you're paying for it, because it's expensive, right? Garagekeepers, E&O, God, that stuff's expensive, right? It costs, I think, Mark was telling me recently his is like $7,000 a year for his E&O, and mine's a little bit more because my coverage is a little bit bigger. And then Anderson's is more too. He had to have more insurance because of the OEs. So we pay a lot for that coverage. You want to make sure they have it, but make sure that you're not becoming an additional insured on their policy. Like, we just want to prove you have the insurance. And then you want to have some questions about what's covered and what's not. So if in this particular case, there was sort of an assumption, I don't blame BMW. I'd be like, these guys are detailing cars. They left the windows open, $600,000. I'd like to get paid. Clearly these guys detailing cars, they don't have that money, right, to do that. So, which is why BMW was so actively pursuing Colony Insurance here versus just the detailer guy. Just be careful what you do, don't do, what happens. Sometimes I'll have people send in a certificate. This used to happen all the time. an insurance, we would want a certificate of insurance for your DRP. We wanted to know you were insured. I'd have them come in and you're uploading them into Integral or whatever the insurance company was using, and someone in the office with the agent or whatever had messed up and listed as an additional. And no, State Farm does not want to be an additional insured on your, or Nationwide does not want to be an additional insured. We just want to make sure you have insurance, right? So be careful with that. This was a great claim, or a great auto zoom. I sent this to my buddy at the marina and was like, hey, just be very careful. Like, I've since sold my boats, and because I was like, I'm not getting, not my trash, not my dumpster, so to speak. I get that's the rule. And if I want to be at the marina, I got to play by the rules. I don't want to play by that rule, so I'm not at the marina anymore. But I sent this over. So just some extra thing. Garagekeepers, your liability, how you subsidize that with maybe a PLUP policy, a personal liability umbrella. All that's critical. Make sure you're really talking to your agent. Make sure you may need a consultant. There's a few people out there that are really good at consulting body shops on all the coverage they'll need and the questions they need to ask from vendors. There's some really good vendors out there that are also trying to help shops understand insurance around ADAS specifically. So I thought that was a really, really interesting case to talk about, because it reflected that. Please don't be an additional insured on somebody's policy. Okay, what's on the shelf? Let's wrap this up. I've told you guys over the last couple of weeks, we're still moving out of the store. So what's on the shelf? God, I'm a geek. I have my lunchbox collection from when I was a kid growing up. So people ask me when they come in the shop, they used to go, oh, do you collect lunchboxes? No, I know there are some people that do, but these are actually the lunchboxes that I would carry in elementary school. And I still have them and I have my thermoses and makes me happy. They're not in great condition. They're all rusty and, at least I wasn't a doodler, and I probably would have been a doodler, but I didn't really ever have Sharpies. I always just had pencils, and you really can't doodle on metal with pencil, or I would have had lots of different stuff in them. But, handle broke off, me slinging it around. And then I would get to where it was on. You see this one, how bent it is from slinging it around. So then it would be like a tomahawk weapon. I have a very vivid memory of me out in the playground at Bayumita Elementary. By the way, you can look that up. It's a real thing. Go Cardinals. But slinging mine around when it finally gives way, and that lunchbox launches like a shot put across the playground, and I'd hit somebody and I got in trouble, and that was just nothing new. I think my mom just waited for a call weekly for when she was going to have to trek on down to the elementary school and get a lecture for something I'd done. They didn't practice or weren't seasoned for it, because my brother was perfect. So I had to make up for all of for the crap he didn't do that he should have, to really season my parents better and be ready for my arrival. But yeah, so there's lunch boxes back here behind me, and I don't collect them, so please don't send me lunch boxes. And I know nothing about them and what lunch boxes are worth, and I understand that that's a thing, and there's even conventions around it, and that's pretty cool too. But I just have the lunch boxes that I carried when I was a kid that I guess my mom kept them, and I don't know why, but so I now have them, which is really cool. So that's the story of what's on the shelf. All right, we're going to see you guys next week. It's been a slow week. I believe, usually this time of the year slows down. It doesn't pick up again until September. Everybody's on vacation. Corporations don't make big announcements, don't do a whole lot. We'll keep coming up with things, topics, and stuff to talk about. I'm going to start sharing more and more and more of the post-repair inspections. I do believe that insurance adjusters don't understand how bad it is, that they think these shops are good too in their mind. I've talked to a lot of adjusters lately that believe there's somebody else within their organization that must have vetted these shops, that they really don't get that they're just on there to be on there and nobody's looked at them in years. So just to show what's out there. And then for the OEs as well, these are the people that are fixing cars that you're sending customers to through your website, because you've allowed these people to be OE certified as well. There's just no way you can be a DRP and be OE certified. I've spent 20 years saying that. There's always somebody online that goes, you don't know, Kristen, we're the exception. We fix cars right. we do things this way, that way, we get paid. And I go, great, can I come visit? Can you show me? I would love. Crickets. And every time I go to the who's supposed to be the best shop, I remember one time one OE put me in a car and said, I'm going to go show you, this is our flagship shop. They're wonderful. They do great repairs. And this OE was so proud to show me this shop. And we walked in and I was like, that's crap. That's a used quarter panel. That's bad. That's not the right welder. That's not the right procedure. That's a bunch of aftermarket parts. That's like, I didn't even, like, I just walked in the back door. I didn't like walk up to the cars, blah, 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 blah. And then he starts pushing and trying to get me out the shop. And I'm like, this is your flagship. If this is your flagship, if this is what you thought good repair looked like, what do you think a bad repair looks like? And then how many flagship shops are on your program versus how many medium shops do you have? So you got 300 shops on your OE certified program. How many flagships do you think you have? 5, 6, 7? Well, okay, your flagship sucks, so those guys are out. But what are we going to do about the other 295 that you've got? So we're probably, there's been several lawsuits over the last couple of years, and everybody goes, I don't ever see the court cases. You don't. They get the initial discovery, like when we start looking into these things, it gets so bad they're settled. Nobody wants that verdict. Nobody wants the attention. When you look at like what the attention of John Eagle did, there's so many of these that have settled lately with death and injury, serious injury, et cetera. We're just on the cusp of a big one biting off and sticking. Plaintiff attorneys associations are very aware of OE certified repair programs, and that's the motherland to them. So we'll see how it goes. All right, I'm going to see you next week on Coffee Talk. And if there's something you want covered, because we are in the slow months of July and August, you've got a topic, shoot it over to Melanie. So just melanie@collisionhub.com, or drop it in the comments on YouTube or the comments on the Facebook page, and we'll give it a go. I got to have something to talk about for the next couple of weeks.